All right, well, welcome everyone. We're going to get going. It is now noon. So we've got another installment of our ornamental IPM webinar series. This has been put together by Bill Erickson and Steve Recchi in Monmouth County, myself, Tim Waller, based out of Cumberland County, and then our support through Aaron Quinn. So today's speakers, I'm going to give everybody a quick update on a couple of the pest issues, disease issues that we've been seeing recently. And again, my name is Tim Waller. I'm the county agent in nursery crops based out of Cumberland County. But the main point today is we've got a guest speaker that Emily Fontaine is the project manager for Rutgers, New Jersey, Ticks for Science. And we're going to talk about all these really important things for all of us that work, in the natural world, particularly those of us that are working with plants on a daily basis. So I think this is the right group for a talk like this. Just a disclaimer, any of the materials that we talk about today, they are subject to the written labeled requirements, state and federal regulations. And these are based upon New Jersey. This is a program coming out of New Jersey. So if there are materials, make sure that you check them out if you're trying to accomplish something similar in a different state. So just make sure that you're following your local regulations. All right, so now for a couple of the updates. So first I want to talk about red-headed flea beetle. Red-headed flea beetle right now, the photo shown here, this is from a local grower cooperator. Red-headed flea beetle is nearing the end of its second generation. However, we know that this pest can have overlapping generations the farther and farther we get into the season, and we may be dealing with some third generation adults as well. Not certain about that, but there are adults that are active right now that are feeding on a lot of our plants out there. So wanted to bring up some ideas of how you can better prepare yourself for next season and get some level of control right now. So it's really important that if you are dealing with red-headed flea beetle, you need to record where you're seeing these problems the best you can with the most detail. That's going to help us when it comes into early spring, early summer, and it just helps us navigate that stage of this. If at all possible, when you are recording where these pests are, if you can plan to put susceptible plants in a different location than plants that you're going to hold over that may get sold a little bit later, early in the summer, it's really important to keep away this brand new luscious growth from where the populations already are and we know about them. So when it comes to controlling them right now, so this insect overwinters as eggs that are laid by the adults that are actively feeding on our plants right now. So if we can knock down their populations, that's going to be beneficial for us moving forward. So we've got contact materials, translaminar materials. These are our standard contact materials, as well as things, organophosphates like acephate that has that translaminar activity, and some of the diamides that are combo materials that also have that translaminar effect. But as the season is cooling, we're going to see less and less of this adult activity, and the time period for a full-blown systemic to work for them is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. If you are going to use a neonicotinoid, you want to use one of the faster acting ones like dinoteffuron, and you really want to avoid using imidacloprid or similar drenches or granular materials at this stage in the game. It's not really going to give us the benefit that we really want. When we do want to use those materials is very early in the spring, roughly a month before, right about the same time that there is egg and larval activity. That means that the plants are going to be ready to go once the adults come out and begin to feed on them. That can really help us out as seasons progress. This is just and I also wanted to note here, we've got these push alerts. You can go to this website here. Once the PDF comes out, that'll be a clickable link. And you can go in and you can set up your own growing degree day information for them. Oh, and I also forgot to note here, these are the growing degree days that are currently in the state. Southern New Jersey's been a little bit warmer than the other parts of the state recently, and there's been some precipitation differences too that I'm about to talk about. So when it comes to our boxwoods, there are two main things well, there are three, but two on this slide here that we really need to be aware of this time of year. So if you've been following along with the Plant Pest Advisor, you know that very early in the season, I put out a lot of updates that boxwood blight may be happening. And the reason that we're putting those updates in the very early springtime is because that's a cool and wet period. We are now entering into another cool and wet period in which boxwood blight can spread rapidly if it's already present in a location. And it's just something that you really should be aware of. These two images here, we've got central New Jersey and we've got southern New Jersey. And as you can see, as we are approaching this cooler part of the season, we're having the right temperature. We're in the 60 to 80 degree time frame, extended periods of wetness. This is a great opportunity for this pathogen to sporulate and potentially spread to new locations. So some of the really important things to do is avoid working with wet plants, implement cleaning your implements if you're going through and you're pruning lots and lots of plants, whether that's pruners or mechanical shears. Making sure you take sanitation seriously this time of year is really important. And then maintaining protective fungicide applications, of which there's a lot of materials. Chlorothalonil with a weather stick type component can be a really beneficial one. The other thing with boxwoods I wanted to point out is that boxwood leaf miner activity is resuming. The larvae are waking up inside of that plant tissue. You're going to see more and more apparent damages right now. If you're in a nursery situation or the damages seem like they're going to be really bad in the future, this is an opportunity for translaminar or systemics, noting that this isn't the 100% best time period, but this is a control window that could be utilized. And that QR code with the boxwood leaf miner takes you to the website where we've got more information as well as this QR code that takes you to the boxwood blight risk model application. And then just a reminder, there's been boxwood blight or box tree moth was detected in Maryland and in Virginia, but at this time, there's been no official quarantine update to that. If you go to this link here or this QR code, there's a lot more information that will help you stay up to date with this. And just another thing that you might be seeing out and about is that European hornet damages are going to be more and more apparent as they're preparing for this later part of the season. That QR code takes you back to our website where there's tons of pictures, a lot more detailed information. And if it's something that you think you're seeing, I'd head over to the website to see if that really is what you're dealing with. And just a reminder again, Aaron Quinn with our support group has really put a ton of information, a ton of really good resources, has been going back through and putting dates of when we were seeing these things into the website. So there's a lot of really good traction that's happening over there. So please head over and check out that website. If you have any suggestions for the website as well, or things you'd like to see, or different ways that you would like that information presented, we're all ears and we'd really appreciate that type of feedback. All right, so in our final session, I can't believe it's the final session of 2025 on September 23rd, we're going to be talking about a lot of insects or pests and diseases that we have talked about throughout the season, but we're going to really hit on some other control windows that can be really impactful as we deal with these issues year after year after year. So with that, if you're seeing anything before our next meeting, please feel free to reach out to us. Let us know if there's something that you want us to touch on. All right. So that's the end of the update section. We're going to have Emily join on and share her screen here. All right, you should have access. Emily. Okay, great. And I think you're on mute too.
Sorry. Okay. So all right, let's get this started. Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Fontaine. I work at Rutgers in the Center for Vector Biology. And today we're going to be talking about becoming tick confident, how to spot, prevent, and protect against ticks in New Jersey. All right, so I just said that my name is Emily Fontaine and I work at the Center for Vector Biology. What I do is I run the New Jersey Ticks for Science program. And what that is a citizen science project where New Jerseyans who encounter ticks can send them to us for free identification and pathogen testing. So people just mail them in. We'll do a photo ID through the form submission, which people do initially so that they can get a tick ID number. Then we'll do a second ID when we receive that tick in the mail in person. And then we provide results back to submitters of what their species identification was, as well as their tick testing results. And our whole goal is to put that on a tick map, showing the different tick species and their prevalence in the different counties, as well as their infection status. So why start a program like NJ Ticks for Science? Well, because in New Jersey and really in the Northeast, ticks are a gigantic problem. And yes, I am big on tick puns. So in 2021, New Jersey was actually the highest reporter of Lyme disease cases in the entire United States, reporting 3,518 cases. Then in 2022, it jumped to nearly 6,000 cases. And finally, in 2023, it jumped to 7,224 cases of Lyme disease. But what I think is so interesting of these past three slides is that if I go back, it's just all green. Unfortunately, I can't go back while I'm presenting. So you'll just have to believe me that those past three slides, New Jersey was green through and through, meaning that there was a Lyme disease case reported in every part of the state for all of those 3 years. And some of the highest reporters of Lyme disease were Hunterdon County, Sussex County, and Warren County. So we're going to put a pin in Lyme for a second and talk about some other tick-borne diseases. If you take one thing from my talk, it's that there's more than just Lyme disease. And this isn't to scare you, it's just to keep you in the know. So if we look at this figure here, you can see that none of these different colors represent Lyme, despite one of them being kind of lime green. That one actually represents anaplasmosis. So all of these here are different tick-borne diseases, and you can see that from 2001 until 2022, there's been a significant increase in case reports of each of these different tick-borne diseases. So these are ehrlichiosis, anaplasmosis, spotted fever rickettsiosis, and babesiosis. So remember in the previous slides, I was talking about how Lyme disease cases are reported in the thousands. These are being reported in the hundreds. However, it doesn't mean that they're not something to be aware of. So just know that there is more than one tick-borne disease and that these tick-borne diseases have been on the rise for the past 20 years. So I said we were putting a pin in Lyme. We're coming back to it. So those 7,224 cases of Lyme disease. What does that mean to me as somebody who studies ticks? Well, it means that all 7,224 people were bitten by this tick. And how do I know that? I know that because I made this little key here where you can see the different tick species and what pathogens or what tick-borne diseases they are linked to. So if we look at the black-legged deer tick, we see that it's the only one that can transmit Lyme bacteria, leading to Lyme disease. But what else can it transmit? The other tick-borne diseases it's linked to are anaplasmosis, babesiosis, encephalitis, and relapsing fever. So if all 7,224 people had Lyme disease, it means that they were bitten by this black-legged deer tick. No other tick species can transmit Lyme. So if they were bitten by this tick, and it takes about 24 to 48 hours for Lyme to transmit, then it's possible if it was carrying another pathogen, that if it has a similar transmission time, that it could also pass that. as well. So that's where co-infections come in. But going back to this figure with the rest of the ticks, I have the Lone Star tick, the Gulf Coast tick, and the Asian Longhorn tick listed here. And these are ticks that are interested in biting you or your pets that you will encounter, even though there are more tick species present in New Jersey. These are the ones that you are most likely going to be encountering. So the black-legged deer tick we just talked about, but the Lone Star tick, this has a different set of tick-borne diseases associated with it. So for one, we have ehrlichiosis, then we have red meat allergy, and then we have spotted fever as the tick-borne diseases for the Lone Star tick. You'll also notice that under investigation is present in the Lone Star tick, Gulf Coast tick, Asian Longhorn tick, and black-legged deer tick. And that's because science, we're always discovering new things. And so who knows, maybe one of these tick species could become a competent vector of a different pathogen. And then we would have to do different pathogen testing for that. But that's why we have it listed as under investigation. Because they could become a competent vector of something else potentially. But right now, we know that the Gulf Coast tick is a competent vector for Rickettsia parkeri, which the common name or the tick-borne disease name for it is spotted fever, tidewater spotted fever to be specific. And I'll actually talk a little bit more about Gulf Coast ticks later, but you'll see here that the Asian Longhorn tick is under investigation. And that's because here in New Jersey, there are no known pathogens that the Asian Longhorn tick is a competent vector of that can transmit to humans that would lead to disease. So here in New Jersey, Asian Longhorn ticks aren't carrying anything that's been found in the literature. There's nothing right now, but again, it's under investigation. So I just talked about some really complicated topics, but let's talk about the basics. What are ticks? This is one really basic thing that if you wanted, you could correct people on. If people are like, these insects, they're actually arachnids. So ticks, they have 8 legs just like a spider does. And so they're actually classified as arachnids and not insects. An insect has 3 segmented body parts and 6 legs, like the fly here, but ticks are in fact arachnids. So now that we know what ticks are, let's talk a little bit more about their life cycle, because this goes hand in hand with how transmission occurs. So they start out as eggs. Then these eggs will hatch and become larvae. Then those larvae will become nymphs. And finally, those nymphs will become adults. But how do they get from one stage to the next? Well, just like how we need energy and nutrients to grow and develop from baby to adult, ticks need the same thing, except for them, they can't eat pasta, hamburgers, hot dogs. Their only food is blood. So to them, they're like, this is the most delicious meal ever. It's the only thing that I eat. So to get from one stage to the next, they need that blood meal because it gives them enough energy to molt and shed their exoskeleton to get to the next stage. And they just need one. So this larva will take a blood meal. It will have enough energy to molt, shed its exoskeleton, become a nymph. Then this nymph is going to do the same thing. This nymph is essentially like a teenage tick. He's like, I'm done being a teenage tick. I want to become an adult tick. So this nymph is then going to take a blood meal, then it will molt, shed its exoskeleton, and become an adult. And then that adult wants to continue the tick population and is going to take a really big blood meal. And this is a female adult. If you ever see a tick that's really fat and grape-like and gorged like this, that's going to be a female tick. And the reason why is because they need more energy, nutrients, sustenance to grow all of these eggs and produce all of these eggs. So that's why they need a bigger blood meal, and that's why they get super engorged. So as I mentioned previously, the life cycle of ticks goes hand in hand with how infection happens. So we're going to show you how infection happens by going through the life cycle. So we had our little tick eggs, one hatched, we have a larva. this larva is hungry. And it's like, I'm done being a larval tick. I want to be a nymphal tick. I want to be a teenage tick. So it's going to go and it's going to take a blood meal from this uninfected mouse. And white-footed mice are the reservoirs for Borrelia burgdorferi, which is the pathogen we're going to be using in this example. But this mouse is uninfected. It's not infected with any pathogens. It's taken its blood meal, and then it gets enough energy to grow, develop, shed its exoskeleton, and then it becomes a nymph. Now, this nymph wants to become an adult tick. It's like being a teenage tick. A nymphal tick is not what they said it was. I want to be an adult tick. So it's going to need another blood meal. So here, this nymphal tick is now going to take another blood meal from a mouse, but a different one that is infected with Borrelia burgdorferi, better known as Lyme bacteria. So now this nymph takes the blood meal and it intakes that Borrelia burgdorferi. And then when it molts, sheds its exoskeleton, this adult is infected with Lyme bacteria. So this tick is like, I want to be a mother tick. I need to have tick babies. So it's going to need a really big blood meal, and it's going to find an unsuspecting victim. Unfortunately, we'll name him Tom. And Tom is going to run into this tick that's hoping to be a mom. And here, it's going to feed on him for over 24 hours. And unfortunately, because this tick is infected with Borrelia burgdorferi, it's going to be able to pass to Tom. And then he is infected with Lyme bacteria. So that was just showing you how the life cycle works and how infection happens. So they just need one blood meal in between each stage. So this is where I'm going to talk about how the different stages can put you at greater risk of tick-borne disease, or the smaller they are can also put you at risk of getting a tick-borne disease, which I'll explain a little bit more through this figure. So here, this is a figure representing 1 year of black-legged tick submissions to NJ Ticks for Science. So this is only black-legged deer ticks, no Lone Stars, just BLTs, as we call them for short in the lab. So here, right about now, we were just in August and now we're starting in September. We can see that there were a lot of female and male black-legged deer ticks found throughout September, October, all the way until May of 2025. So we were getting lots of black-legged deer tick adults throughout the fall, winter, and then early spring. So that's when, at that point, the adult black-legged deer ticks have had 2 blood meals. So a lot of the time, people will think that in the spring and summertime, that is the time when they should be most worried about Lyme disease or most worried about ticks in general. However, you can see through this figure here that tick season is every season. And really, the season for adult black-legged deer ticks is the fall and the winter. There were only 2 weeks in January, or maybe 3 weeks in January, where it was really, really cold and we weren't receiving any ticks. So ticks will be active and questing as long as it is above freezing outside, above 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So just keep that in mind as we go into this fall season, because people will think, oh, I'm totally fine. I don't need to wear any insect or arachnid repellent. And unfortunately, that's how tick-borne disease can sometimes happen because you're not even expecting it. So be on the lookout for ticks, even when it's fall and winter time. But you'll see here as well, nymphs, there's really a distinct season for nymphs, and that's in May through July. And so some might argue, you could argue that adult ticks are more dangerous in the sense that they have had more blood meals, so they have a greater chance of being infected with something. But you could also argue that nymphal ticks are more dangerous because they are smaller. They've had an opportunity to be infected with a pathogen, and they are so small. And how small are they? Well, they're about the size, nymphal ticks are about the same size as a poppy seed, and then adult ticks are about the same size as a sesame seed. I didn't even include larval ticks on here because they are smaller than a poppy seed, and I don't know what's smaller than a poppy seed, maybe like a thing of salt. But really, another reason why I didn't put larval ticks on here, because in a second I'll show you that I put a bunch of ticks on these on this bagel, is because larval ticks are most often born uninfected. And that's because, if you remember me going through the life stages and how transmission occurs, it's because they need to pick it up through a blood meal. So when they're born, they are most often uninfected. There are rare, Borrelia miyamotoi is a rare example of something that is transovarial. And even though it's transovarial, it's it doesn't continue the infection very strongly as it's passed from mother to egg. And that is a super, super rare pathogen. I rarely ever see it. So really larval ticks are less of a concern because they're most often uninfected. And they're also smaller than a poppy seed. Nymphal ticks, they have had an opportunity to feed because they have gone from a larval, they've had a blood meal here, then they were able to molt and become a nymph. So they are about the same size as a poppy seed and could be infected with a pathogen. So if you're not very good at looking for ticks, then that could make it more likely for tick-borne disease to occur just because they're so small. But adult ticks, they're about the same size as a sesame seed. So it makes them easier to spot, but they have had a couple of chances to pick up a pathogen. So that makes them dangerous in that sense. So usually when I give this talk in person, I have people raise their hands and guess on the previous slide how many ticks are on the bagel. And because this is over webinar format, I'm just going to show you that there are 11 ticks on this bagel. I put a variety of nymphs and adults, and you probably were able to see a couple of the adults, but you weren't able to see the nymphs. And that's because they are so small. And it's important to be aware of these things so you know what to look for. So let's go back to our example of Tom who has Lyme disease. Poor Tom. But here we have that same tick that bit Tom, and it's still embedded on him. But something else is in this tick. Oh no, what's happening? This tick is actually co-infected with Lyme and Babesia. So remember how I said if that tick stays on for over 24 hours, it will be able to transmit Lyme bacteria to Tom, infecting him. Well, if it stays on for 36 to 48 hours, then it will also have the opportunity to pass the Babesia to Tom. So that means that Tom could possibly have two tick-borne diseases, Lyme disease and babesiosis. So this is why it's important to be aware of these things, because you could have two tick-borne diseases or multiple tick-borne diseases. I've seen ticks co-infected with 3 pathogens at once. You could be infected with multiple pathogens that are making you feel sick, but sometimes they require different treatment plans. Like I know that Lyme requires doxycycline most often, and Babesia is oftentimes azithromycin and atovaquione. But none of that is medical advice. That's just what I've seen in the literature as what is given as treatment. So now Tom is infected with Lyme and Babesia. Poor Tom. And it's also because he's wearing not good tick attire for going out in the wilderness. And that's what we're going to get into in these slides. So what you can do to not be like Tom is you can wear light colored clothing. It makes it easier to spot ticks. You can also apply a repellent that contains DEET, picaridin, oil of lemon eucalyptus, or IR3535. What we do in the field is I wear like a Ghostbusters like white jumpsuit, and I pre-treat that with permethrin, and permethrin is actually not a repellent, it's an insecticide. So if you're going to use permethrin, be very careful because it is toxic to cats. And I've heard that if you get it on your skin, it tingles and it's killing the ticks. So definitely not good to have on you. Make sure to read the directions on your bottle before you put it on, because I think that some brands might be a little bit different with the number of hours you need to have it sitting out for. But I'll come back from the field after I was dragging for ticks, and I'll be pulling dead ticks out of my socks because they're treated with permethrin. So it really kills the ticks dead. But remember, if you have cats, be extra careful. And another thing that we do when we're going out and dragging for ticks, or if I'm going out on a weekend for a hike, is I'll tuck my pants into my socks and I'll tuck my shirt into my pants. And what this does is it reduces the access to your skin. The sooner a tick finds your skin, the sooner they're going to find a spot to bite. And the sooner they're biting you, we talked about transmission time. It gives them a greater opportunity to pass that pathogen to you. So doing a tick check is very important because you could potentially find a tick on you just crawling before it even has time to embed itself, or you could find a tick that has been embedded for a very short amount of time and remove it and potentially reduce the risk of getting a tick-borne disease just by doing that tick check. So those were some tick prevention methods. Some things that you can do in your own backyard are by reducing some things that you can do in your own backyard are mowing the grass, trimming vegetation, and raking the leaves. These are common areas that ticks are found. So grassy fields, forests, and leaf litter. So to reduce their populations, you can mow the grass, trim the vegetation, rake the leaves. And what this does is it makes the environment more dry. Ticks are very desiccation prone to desiccation, which means drying out. So by making these areas have less coverage and allowing more sun in, you're making it so the area is more dry. And even more than that, you're making it so the hosts of the ticks, not predators, are not going to want to be there because it's too open. So if there's mice in the grassy fields or in the forests or in the leaf litter, this isn't an ideal spot for those mice because they'll be eaten by a predator. So those ticks are going to be like, where are my mice hosts? I'm so hungry. Unfortunately, if you rake the leaves, trim the grass, they are less likely to be there. So with NJ Ticks for Science, how you can send us ticks if you encounter them is you can go to our webpage and press send us your ticks. Then you can fill out the form and upload your pictures. We're going to be making some changes soon to our website, but for the next couple of months, our form is still going to look like this. So you'll put in where and when you found the tick. You'll attach some photos, and what this will do will allow us to identify the tick potentially before we even receive it in the mail. And this can give you a better idea of what pathogens you might have been exposed to, because if you remember that slide that had the graphic of the different tick-borne diseases and the different tick species they're linked to, if you know it was a black-legged deer tick, then you could potentially talk to your doctor about Lyme disease or babesiosis. Or if it's a Lone Star tick and you were really, really worried about Lyme, then you're like, oh, Lone Star ticks don't even carry Lyme. And they have a low infection rate of Ehrlichia. So we would test a Lone Star tick for Ehrlichia, but I'll get more into that in a second. So here you would attach the photos, and then once you submit your form, you would get a number because this is a completely anonymous study. So we don't want to collect information about you. We're just collecting information about your tick. And it's really important to send that ID number in with your tick. Otherwise, we won't be able to get back to you with results because remember, we don't want info about you. So if you just send us a tick in an envelope with your phone number, email address, and any other information to contact you, unfortunately, we won't be able to test that tick or identify it because we need that number. So in the lab, once we receive it, we identify the species, then we will extract the ticks based on, we will extract the ticks, and then based on their species, we will do qPCR testing. So different tick species get different tests. Lone Star ticks will get Ehrlichia Ewingi and Ehrlichia Chafiensis testing, and black-legged deer ticks will get tested for Lyme bacteria, Borrelia miyamotoi, Anaplasma, Phagocytophilum, and Babesia microti. So then you would go to track your progress on the homepage of the website, and you would type in your ID number, and there you would see your testing results. And typically it takes about 2 weeks to get your testing results back. And this is an example of a tick that was really hot because it tested positive for these 3 different pathogens: Borrelia burgdorferi, which is Lyme bacteria, Anaplasma, Phagocytophilum, and Babesia microti. And I remember the comment on this was, "I'm feeling really sick." And I honestly, after seeing these test results, I understand why. So hopefully if you submit a tick to us, your page wouldn't look like this, but this is an example. And I like to use this example because it shows that ticks can be co-infected, and it's important to do to get your tick tested and learn more about it, because it could mean something for your health. So really, with NJ Ticks for Science, what our goal is to help New Jerseyans be able to identify ticks. And what we mean by that is we can do the species identification, but really we want New Jerseyans to be more aware of how small ticks can be and how big they can be too. So over here, I have a larval tick that has, you'll notice, 6 legs in their larval stage. They actually have 6 legs. They get their 8 legs once they reach their nymphal stage. But a tick can also look like this and be as fat as a grape. So ticks can be itty bitty tiny, or they can be a little bit larger. We also want people to know that there's more than just Lyme disease out there. You don't have to know all of these different tick-borne diseases, but knowing that there is more than Lyme and that co-infections can happen is important to make good decisions when you're at the doctor's office, or just have good conversations with your doctor. Another thing that we want people to be able to do is feel confident in preventing tick bites, knowing to use repellent or an insecticide like permethrin, doing tick checks, and wearing light-colored clothing when they go out. Also, we want people to be able to feel confident in tick removal. What you do is you just grasp the tick and you pull up and remove it with either your fingers, forceps, or a tick remover. So tweezers, forceps, I use those interchangeably. Those 3 options are great options for removing a tick. The most important thing is just removing it, because the longer a tick stays on, the more likely that if it's carrying a pathogen, it will pass to you. So just to give you some updates on NJ Ticks for Science in the past year, this is a map representing the number of Lone Star ticks that we've received from people all across New Jersey. So you can see that most of the Lone Star ticks we received were from southern New Jersey, and also they're more close to the coast. And this is because the Lone Star tick is more desiccation resistant. It's a tougher tick, so it can do better in sunnier regions or when it's hotter and drier. So we see them in this region. But then, and for the testing of Lone Star ticks, we saw 1.7% infection with, we saw 1% infection with Ehrlichia chafiensis, and then 2.7% infection with Ehrlichia ewingi. And with Lyme, I'm actually going to go to this slide. With black-legged deer ticks, we saw their distribution again all across New Jersey, but we see them more so in northern New Jersey. And this is more so where there's like wooded areas, forested. So Lone Star ticks can survive in more dry coastal areas, and deer ticks, they're more likely to be in like woodsy, more moist environments because they're less desiccation resistant. So here you can see some of our results for, oh no, I think I deleted that slide, but I remember the different percentages for these different infection rates. So Anaplasma phagocytophilum, we saw, I believe it was 8% infection with that, and we saw close to we saw 33% infection with Borrelia burgdorferi, which is really the biggest deal out of all of these different tick-borne diseases, and 1% infection with Borrelia miyamotoi, and Babesia microti, I'm actually going to have to get back to you on. But really, one of the most important things that we saw with this is how Lyme disease incidence by county of residence in New Jersey in 2023. This is a map from the Department of Health. And we can see here that in areas where there's not that much incidence of Lyme disease, for example, Cape May, we didn't receive that many ticks from them. However, where there's lots of incidents of Lyme disease, for example, Sussex County or Hunterdon County, we received many black-legged deer ticks from those counties. So this was just cool to see that where there's most Lyme disease is kind of where we were getting the most ticks. But if you notice over here, Salem looks like it has it's a lower infection rate, and we only got a couple of ticks from them. But if you're from Salem and if you're from Cumberland, we could use some more ticks from those regions. So shout out to those different counties. So hopefully that takes you from maybe frantic worry about ticks to enthusiastic adventurers, since you know more information about how to protect yourself and the different tick-borne diseases that are out there. And also our different educational materials are available on our website or by email request. We have them in Spanish and English. And if you're interested in any of those, please let us know. Thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you very much for that presentation. Bill, you want to go ahead and stop the recording and we can open up for questions?